Hey, so today I'm going to do my foundation routine for you, so if you want to see how to do this, then keep watching. The first thing which we need to do is apply a primer, and so I'm using Face of Australia Face Base Primer. And so I'm just going to apply just a little bit, just a little dot. And so I'm going to apply it over my nose area, on my cheeks, as well as my forehead, and to my chin. So now I'm just going to rub it in. Okay, and so we want to let that set for a little bit, so I'm just going to let it dry off. And so when you start feeling that it becomes a little bit dry and so it's not as wet, then we can start applying our concealer and our foundation. And so what we're going to need next is, I always like to apply my concealer first before I apply my foundation, just because I like to start off with a really nice clean slate, I guess, if you want to call it that. And so that's why I always apply my concealer first and then my foundation. And so with the concealer, I'm going to be using Face of Australia concealer in Warm. So it's just any concealer that would suit your skin tone. And so they already provide a brush, and so I'm just going to apply a little to my under eye area, so I guess onto my bags, a little bit to my forehead, to my nose, sides of my nose. So just any problemed areas that you have. I usually get a couple spots on my chin, as well as just on my cheeks. And so I'm just going to let that set for a couple seconds, because I like to get my concealer a little bit of a tacky consistency before I start patting it on, just to make sure that it doesn't blend into my skin, but it will just sit on top, just to make sure that it covers the imperfections which I'm wanting it to cover. And so I'm just going to use my Sigma SS194, which is just a concealer brush, and it just looks like this. And so I'm just going to lightly press downwards or tap the concealer just to blend it a little with the skin, but not too much, because I still want it to just sit on top and not be too blended. So just onto my forehead. Nose. And if you have a spot or a pimple or just something that you're finding is really hard to cover, it's best to apply thin layers first of your concealer. So don't just go and apply a really big blob of concealer. Apply a little bit, then pat it down with your brush or even your finger, and then just let it set, and then apply a little bit more, and just keep applying a little bit more until you get the spot covered, instead of just applying a whole heap at one time. It just lets it look a lot more natural, and it's covered a lot better. Okay, so now that I've done that, now what I'm going to do is applying my foundation. And so I'm actually going to be using my fingers and a brush for this step, and so I'm using L'Oreal Cashmere Perfect Soft Powdered Cream Makeup in Honey Beige 416. And so my foundation usually changes depending on whether it's summer or winter, or if I'm at uni. And so, but any foundation you have will be fine. And so I'm just going to grab a little bit, not too much. I'm just going to rub it between my fingers, and starting with my forehead, I'm just going to apply a little bit to my forehead, bringing it down, and then I'm going to go from my nose area and bring it down to underneath my eye area, pressing down, and then I'm going to extend it over my cheeks, and then on my chin, and then underneath my nose. So the first layer of foundation that I apply, I like to apply with my hands, just to make sure that it melts and blends very well into my skin. And so I'm also just going to bring it down onto my chin to make sure you don't have the differing lines between your chin and your face. And so now I'm also just going to grab a little bit extra of my foundation, and using my SS190 brush, which is my foundation brush, I've got a little bit on my finger, so I'm just going to apply a little bit to the brush and going over the areas which are affected, so especially my nose, so just any red areas or pimples and that kind of thing. I'm just going to use the brush because your hands have a lot of oil in them, which makes your foundation wear off very easily, and so if you apply it with your brush then it will just last longer, and so those are the areas that you especially want covered. So just over any imperfections. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm just going to let all my foundation and my concealer set because I don't want to apply my powder and my dry materials over the wet foundation, because then it starts to get really clumpy and everything. And so I'll be back after a couple of minutes when I've let this dry. So just one more quick tip before I continue on. I always like to keep a little bit of antibacterial hand gel, especially when you're applying makeup to your face or your eyes, that if you have dirty hands or anything, it's just a quick way to clean your hands to make sure that your skin doesn't get infected, because I know if you're pressing or touching your eyes too much, they start to get really red and infected, and so that's just a really quick and simple way to ensure that your eyes aren't going to become red or anything after you've been applying your makeup, because if you're going to spend that long applying your makeup, you really don't want it to get kind of rashed or sensitive. And so now onto face powder. And so the next step which I do is I apply a face powder, and so I'm using Mineral 2 Glow medium mineral powder foundation, and so I like to apply just a little bit of powder on top of my foundation just to make sure that that it sets all the foundation in and lets the foundation last for longer, and also it stops your face from going oily, and it just gives out a really, really nice colour. And so I'm just going to be using my Sigma SS187 brush and a little bit of the mineral powder foundation, and so I've got a little bit on here, so I'm just going to tap some off or even blow it. And so I'm just going to apply a little bit to my forehead area. Let's grab a little bit more. I'm just going to apply a little bit to my cheeks. So just in the areas where you mostly get oily, which is your T-zone, your nose, and then your chin. But I also get a little bit oily in my cheeks, so I'm just going to apply it all over. And so this brush is to specifically give you a really nice flawless foundation look, and so it's really helpful to have this brush. And so this is the SS187, and it's very soft. Okay, so now that I have my powder on there, which is my powder foundation, I'm just going to apply a little bit of bronzer. And so first what I'm going to do is, using my angle brush, the 168 brush, it's just got a little bit of an angle, I'm going to grab a little bit of bronzer just to contour my cheeks. And so I'm using Australis Outback bronzer, so it's just any bronzer. I'm going to tap off the excess. And so now to contour your cheeks, you just have to do a fish face. And so I know it's kind of silly, but it looks really, really nice once you're done. So just blow your mouth out, and then you're going to be drawing the line. So it's just like this. And so we're drawing up this cheekbone here. And so I'm just going to do the other side. Okay, so now we have these really two harsh bronzer lines, and so we're just going to be using our 187 brush again, and I'm just going to lightly blend these contour lines out just to give it a really soft and supple finish, just to give it a really nice finish. And so that's my foundation routine, and so that's what I usually wear to uni or if I'm going out. And so I hope you enjoyed it and that it was helpful, and thank you for watching.